So I'm just making this video to compile all the information I've been able to find out about the supposed doll that aged. On September 27th, 2009, the tabloid Daily Express posted an article online believed to be the origin story of a rather strange doll, one that had rapidly aged due to years of neglect and abandonment. The following is the complete story as it was originally posted. With its deathly stare and ugly wrinkled skin, it looked like a rotting skull of a zombie or an Egyptian mummy. But this gruesome, emaciated creature began its life as a cute, attractive toy, bought by parents as a gift for their child. Like many playthings, the doll was eventually consigned to the attic, but as it lay gathering dust, demonic forces set to work. When the family retrieved it 11 years later, like Dorian Gray's infamous portrait, the doll had withered and aged. The story of the doll that grew old is told by expert on the paranormal, Jim Eaton, in his book, Ghosts Caught on Film 2. The family bought the doll in good condition, said Mr. Eaton. They decided to store it in the attic. When they stumbled upon it 11 years later, they were shocked at how much it had aged, wrinkled like an old man. The horrified family gave it away, and it soon changed hands for a lot of money. This is a picture taken before the doll was given away. We can only wonder what condition it may be in now, he said. Ghost Caught on Film 2 is published by David and Charles. For full disclaimer, the website no longer shows a picture of what the original doll looked like, if it ever did. However, whether or not it shows what it originally looked like in the book, I'm not quite sure. I do not own the book. However, I was able to find it on Amazon. I'm not going to go through the effort of buying it to find out because, well, I'll go ahead and tell you now, this story is completely false. I'll leave a link in the description to Amazon where you can buy a copy of the book if you're interested. It really is a pretty sad story if you think about it. Not necessarily scary, but it definitely intrigued me when I first found out about it. While I was doing my research, the first verifiable date I was able to find was September 25th of 2009. An 18-second YouTube video titled Ghost Stories, The Doll That Grew Old was published on YouTube. The following is what the video was.
Read the incredible ghost story of the children's doll left abandoned in an attic for decades that aged like a dead body. Only in this weekend's Sunday Express.
While this was the first source on the internet of the doll that aged, it doesn't mean it was the first source for this doll. We do know now that on November 2008, almost an entire year before the publication of the Daily Express, an American website called Angels and Ghosts published a story of a man named Robert Hudson, nicknamed Robo Hudson. I will now quote the story as told by Robert Hudson. 40 years ago, my father-in-law came across this doll in a dime store in America. It was displayed surrounded by old pictures of itself taken years before. On the floor in front of the display was a red line. The display had a sign saying, "In 1888, this doll was given to Cedric Argyle of London. The doll had previously been used in no fewer than 68 exorcisms. Reverend Thomas Blythe and his friend, Mr. Argaeus, used this doll in exorcisms when mischievous spirits haunted the stately homes and staff quarters of the gentry all over England. Thomas had often commented on the doll looking at him on numerous occasions and blinking or smiling. After a time, the doll was finally photographed by a friend. When it was photographed again some 20 minutes later, the photographer said he noticed the doll seemed to smile and it spooked him. No one took much notice until the plates were developed, and the photographs revealed the face had actually changed. All the people that had viewed the photographs were amazed at the differences, and put it down to the lost souls unfortunately being trapped inside the doll. During the exorcisms, the doll had been used to distract the spirits by being offered up as a plaything. Mr. Brown made the assumption that, whilst the banishing of the spirit from the home it was haunting, it somehow had entered the doll, trapping itself. Over the next few years, the doll was photographed by thousands of people and now resides here after being sold to the dime store by Mr. Brown's grandson. Since being here, customers have stood on a red line and took 2 pictures of the doll, one after the other. And you're advised to inspect these once developed. Almost every time, the two photographs will have different looking facial expressions. Sometimes looking like a boy, sometimes a girl, sometimes smiling, sometimes sad. The doll was passed to me and eventually ended up on display for 7 years in the Museum of Curios, Cornwall, until 2007. Again, it has been photographed thousands of times by digital cameras with the same result. It was a favorite amongst the customers, beating the collection of shrunken heads in popularity. The doll is incredible. I can honestly say I have never come across anything quite like it. I'm not superstitious or a believer in ghosts or spirits per se, but I have witnessed the changes when the photographs were filmed. My conclusion was that subtle light changes or movements on the camera angle made the face appear different. Maybe? The doll is made of cloth and it looks like real glass eyes. I've never seen eyes like this in a doll before. Really lifelike, and I hesitate to say quite spooky. It is around 9 inches long and delicate. And this is definitely not for playing with, and it should be displayed in a temperature-controlled environment. So I'm sure at this point some of you who knew about this thing before watching this video are probably quite elated. You've found the real history of it. However, that's not exactly, the case. Let's talk about Robert Hudson for a while. He owned a shop called Puff's, in addition to an adjacent museum called the Museum of Curios Collection, in the coastal town of Newquay, Cornwall, England. Robert, he was a merchant that mainly focused on oddities and things like skulls, true bones of humans and other animals, as well as vitro fetuses, which he claimed to be equally true. Now keep that in mind. The store owned a website called puffs.com, which was shut down in 2007. It was the same year he closed his store and he disowned part of his collection. Now, the biggest issue with Robert was he had a questionable way of doing business. On March 19, 2004, the BBC reported that Robert pleaded guilty smuggling skulls into Britain and acquiring a dolphin skeleton for commercial purposes. At this time, at the age of 38, he was sentenced to 120 hours of community service, in addition to a fine £1,500. Now, if you think that Robert, despite his method, marketed totally true items, you might be disappointed. He ended up returning back to national headlines on August that year. Reporters were investigating the sale of dead babies to such museums and unique shops, but Robert said he didn't own or market any parts of human body that was true, therefore backpedaling on stories he had previously claimed to be factual. So, what exactly do we know about the doll? When talking about Thomas Blythe or his friend, Mr. Argaeus Brown, a simple Google search in conjunction with exorcism or the doll simply brings up links to this story. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they didn't exist, but if they were as famous as the story suggests they were, I imagine there would be more information about that. It could be because of the time period. This did happen quite a long time ago, but I was unable to find any information regarding its previous owners, nor the store that Robert's father-in-law happened upon this doll at 40 years prior. Our next big clue comes from a man named Philip Henry Douglas Palmer. He had a collection of bizarre and wonderful artifacts throughout his life in England. He would have worked as an administrator in the UK National Health Service, where he would have come into contact with many on-duty physicians as well as retirees. These encounters led him to accumulate a huge collection of anatomical models and curiosities from the 18th and 19th century. He was also a prolific trader in coins, stamps, and just about anything collectible. He was well known in many collector circles, actually. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Robert Hudson was traveling and accumulating his own collection of weird and wonderful things, where he met Palmer's daughter, Allison. They shared many ideas, and Robert learned a lot in the following 15 years until Palmer passed away in 2002. The Museum of Curios was opened by Robert and Allison in 1999, and the museum hosted most of its combined collection up until 2001. Palmer sold his part of the collection to Hudson, where the museum ended up amassing a collection of more than 4,000 items over the years. Therefore, we can say with confidence that Palmer was indeed the father-in-law not mentioned by Robert Hudson in this story. It also explains how he ended up in possession of the doll mentioned in the post. If you're interested, a small number of the artifacts remain from Palmer's collection, and they can be seen at the Victor Wayne Museum of Curiosities, Fine Art and Natural History in London, England. Going back to Robert's, we do know a couple more things that he knew about the doll. He stated that he had no other pictures of the doll and no older information about it. He even said he believed in his history, but he did not believe it to be haunted. That's important to keep in mind. He owned this thing for a long time and still didn't think it was haunted. He also said if he had thought it was haunted, he would have tried to make more money off of it. Didn't mention the name, but he said a TV show had recorded the doll and claimed that the eyes would move. He also claimed that he had been questioned by more than 70 separate journalists around the world, which is questionable due to the absence of articles about it. One last thing to mention is he stated that the park received millions of visitors a year, and that thousands went there only because of the doll. Well, this is questionable as well because rarely does one find pictures of this thing on the internet or even comments about it. So now for the good news and the bad news. Since Philip Palmer passed away in 2002, we have no way of finding out what store he bought the doll from, or any insight into how we find out more about its past or its age. Which means as far as I can delve into this, the case is simply closed. That's all we're gonna find out about it. The good news, however, is that this doll still exists, and we know its location. It is located in Paris-d'Aza, which I'm almost confident I mispronounced, a privately owned zoo and botanical garden located in Belgium. It is a massive animal theme park that houses more than 4,000 animals. Inside the museum next to the doll is a nameplate. Upon reading it, we discovered that the official name for this doll is actually La Pape Hante, and I probably mispronounced that as well. Beneath that, we see a very familiar name, P.H.D. Palmer, which ties us directly back to Robert Hudson. So, in conclusion, do I think the doll is haunted? No. Robert certainly doesn't seem to think so either. I'm also skeptical to the exorcism backstory that Palmer was told when he bought it, but again, there's really no way to verify whether it's real or not. But perhaps that's for the best. Part of the intrigue surrounding this doll is the mystery, and maybe if we knew the truth, it just wouldn't be as special. But anyways, that's everything I've been able to find. Thanks for watching. I hope it helped. If you happen to know anything else about this story that I don't or that I didn't cover in the video, feel free to leave the information in a comment down below.